Chapter 12, He is Christmas. The giving of gifts is not something man invented. God started the giving spree when He gave a gift beyond words, the unspeakable gift of His Son. Unknown.
The glow of the moon illuminated the rooftop and the yard around the small, white stucco farmhouse. The house looked like it had not received a fresh coat of paint in decades. The house was tucked behind a row of trees on Pioneer Street in a city called Sandy. I assume it was named after the dirt because the region was formed as a delta from the ancient glaciers that pushed sand and silt out of the large canyon to the east. I landed behind the house so my reindeer could enjoy a quick snack of tall grass that rose out of the snow like little New York skyscrapers. I slung the heavy bag of Christmas cheer over my left shoulder and sprinted from the sleigh toward the back porch. Sometimes I have to use the back door of homes that don't have chimneys. As I got closer to the porch, I stopped dead in my tracks. There was a bounty of beautifully wrapped gifts and a number of spectacular presents that didn't need to be wrapped, like a red mountain bike with a red bow on the handlebars. There were boxes and baskets of food and other assorted household treasures. Have I already been to this house and forgot to take all the gifts inside, I thought? No, impossible. I tiptoed up the back stairs and stood in front of the cache of presents. There was a white envelope on top of one of the presents. It was addressed to me. I opened the envelope and read the handwritten note.
Dear Santa, we know you'll be going inside this home to deliver presents tonight. An amazing family that needs a little extra help this year lives here. As you know, the dad lost his job earlier this year, and the mom is working 2 jobs to make ends meet. The 2 kids, Rachel and Michael, are the sweetest children, and we want to make their Christmas morning extra special. Our neighborhood pitched in to help us get what this family really needs. It's been a great experience for all of our families to rally behind this family. Will you please take our gifts inside to deliver them with the ones you're delivering from the North Pole? This way, our gifts can remain anonymous. Thank you, Santa, for helping us make this Christmas extra special for our entire neighborhood. We love them and want them to have a Merry Christmas. The Neighborhood Elves.
I smiled, and I chuckled with a soft ho 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 under my breath. It warms my heart when I see neighborhoods united to help one another. The strong force of elfishness is alive and well here. As I cracked the back door, I was immediately greeted with that special feeling we receive when we resonate with the frequency of the 528 tuning fork. You know immediately when you are in an environment in harmony with that frequency. I slid my bag from my shoulder and placed it on the faded hardwood floor that covered the entire house. The only light in the room was coming from a tiny Christmas tree. It was only about 3 feet tall, sitting on top of a small round table with 4 wooden legs nestled in the corner of the living room. The tree was decorated with a single strand of tiny white bulbs, paper ornaments colored with crayons, popcorn strung together in a simple chain, and a handmade angel adorned the top of the tree. The family who lived here were obviously of very simple means and didn't have much at all. The small living room was sparsely furnished with a well-used couch along one wall below the window with a tattered throne rug in front of it. There was a wingback chair in the other corner. I dragged my bag along the hardwood floor toward the tree. I unpacked my bag and arranged all the presents from the North Pole in front of the Christmas tree. I returned to the back porch and made several trips to haul in the gifts from the neighbors. The neighbors were generous and had thought of everything, all kinds of things a family needs for everyday living, plus some fun things for the kids. I was touched by the generosity and caring for the neighbors who had given so much thought and care. The presents I delivered, combined with the gifts from the neighbors, filled the small living room. I knelt down to arrange the last gift. One of my bells rubbed against the pedal on the bike. I froze, gritted my teeth, and cringed, hoping to restrain the echo of the sound from traveling throughout the tiny house. I paused for a moment to listen for any response. Have you ever had the feeling you know someone is watching you? I gingerly turned my head toward the doorway from the living room to the hallway. I was busted. I was caught in the act of making this delivery. Standing a few feet behind me was a beautiful little girl. It was Rachel, the 7-year-old girl of the family. The reflection of the Christmas lights sparkled in her eyes. Our gazes met, and there was that magical connection I experience when a child looks into my eyes with such wonder, such belief, such love. I pursed my lips, raised my cheeks, and smiled. Rachel was wearing a long nightshirt that went down to her ankles. It had a nostalgic holiday print on it. She looked as surprised as I was. She obviously couldn't believe she was standing in front of Santa on Christmas Eve. I rolled back off my knees and crossed my legs in front of me. I lifted my right index finger to my mouth to communicate silently. I then mentioned for Rachel to come over and sit on my left knee. She tiptoed across the hardwood floor, being so careful not to make any noise. She was just a few feet in front of me when one of the floorboards made a squeak. She stopped mid-step and looked at me with a terrified expression. She took 2 or 3 fast steps toward me, leaped, and landed on my knee. We smiled at each other and shrugged. She reached her arms around my neck and gave me a mighty squeeze. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Michael, Rachel's little 4-year-old brother, peeking from behind the doorframe. Michael pulled away out of sight and then peeked again. He knew I saw him, so he stepped into the doorway and stared at me. He rubbed his eyes to be more awake. His face was expressionless, as though he probably was dreaming. I smiled at him and motioned for him to come to me. I pointed at my right knee. He sauntered over and plopped on my right knee. He leaned in close to my face and looked me in the eye and touched my cheek to discern if I was real. I sensed Mom and Dad were awake now, and they were standing in the hall just around the corner. I noticed Mom peek into the room to make sure everything was all right. She disappeared, and I could hear a faint whisper of conversation she was having with Dad. Rachel and Michael looked at each other and then back at me. I whispered, "Who knows what Christmas is really all about?" Rachel looked at me and then sprung to her feet. She ran over to the tiny Christmas tree and reached under the bottom row of branches to expose a tiny plastic nativity scene like you'd find at All a Dollar. I hadn't even noticed it was there when I was arranging all the gifts. Rachel carefully reached into the stable with 2 fingers and plucked baby Jesus from the manger. She cupped her other hand under the figurine like a saucer to protect it as she scampered back over to me. She stood right in front of me. She reached out with her empty hand and grabbed my left hand and pulled it in front of her. She carefully placed baby Jesus in the palm of my hand. She then took both of her hands and folded my hand closed. With the voice of an angel, she whispered, "Santa, he is Christmas." Michael looked at me, fully aware now that he was not dreaming. I smiled at him, nodded, and repeated, "He is Christmas." In that moment, it was as though the windows of heaven opened up and pure love flooded the room. There was an abundance of joy that confirmed to me that the world could be healed if we all shared more of the magic Rachel, Michael, and I were sharing. From the hallway, I could hear Mom and Dad sniffling. They heard Rachel's response to my question. I can only imagine what their hearts were feeling. Their little daughter was sitting on Santa's knee in the middle of the night on Christmas Eve, reminding Santa what Christmas is really all about. I kept baby Jesus clenched in my hand, holding on to the magic of the moment. Tears were welling up in my eyes. Time stood still. No one blinked. Rachel, Michael, and I sat together in silence. I looked back at the Christmas tree. The lights were glowing brighter. The room felt warmer. There are those rare and brief moments in life that leave an indelible mark on our souls, moments that we can never duplicate even if we try. Rachel's simple words pierced my soul. He is Christmas. I was being personally tutored by one of God's little angels to remind me what this magic holiday is really all about. Mom and Dad, I know you're in the hall, I said, breaking the silence. Please come in here and join us. Mom entered the room first, with her hand over her shoulder holding Dad's hand. I wasn't alone in feeling the sacred nature of this moment. They, too, had eyes full of tears. Mom and Dad sat on the floor next to us. Michael got up off my knee and went over and sat on his daddy's lap. Dad wrapped his arms around his son, squeezed him tight, and kissed the back of his head. Mom and Dad both looked around the room, soaking in what was happening. They could see all the gifts I had delivered from the neighbors. They both looked back at me. Their eyes communicated their gratitude for this special moment. "Thank you, Santa," Mom said almost inaudibly. I mouthed the words, "You're welcome," because no sound came out of my mouth. Mom reached over and held Dad's hand. "Can we sing a song together?" I asked. "Yes, please," Mom replied. There is one song that captures what Christmas is really all about. When I hear this song, I can see the bright stars shining brightly over Bethlehem. I can see Joseph, Mary, and the baby Jesus in the stable on that special night when it all began. Go back with me to the early 19th century, to the small Austrian village of Oberndorf bei Salzburg, where this song originates. Silent Night, also known as Still Nacht, in its original German, is one of the most beloved and widely recognized Christmas carols worldwide, and my favorite Christmas song. I began singing. Silent night, holy night. Mom and Dad joined me. All is calm, all is bright. Rachel and Michael joined us. Round yon virgin mother and child. And then I could hear a host in heaven join us. Holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, shepherds quake at the sight, glory stream from heaven afar. Heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Christ our Savior is born. Christ our Savior is born. As we sang the last line of the song, I waved my arm like a maestro conducting the heavenly choir to hold one last note. The note echoed into eternity. Wow. Just wow, Dad said as he exhaled. You may forget the presents you received tonight, but you will never forget the gift, the feeling you have right now in your heart, I said. Mom wiped tears from her eyes with the back of her hand. She looked at Rachel and Michael like only a mother full of pride for her children could. Daddy and I have experienced many special Christmases, she said, and we can tell you stories about how Christmas was celebrated in our families when both of us were children. Mom shared a story about large family Christmas gatherings with aunts and uncles, cousins, grandparents, homemade treats like divinity and fudge while sipping hot cocoa by the fireplace. She talked about reading Bible passages from Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 20, describing Jesus' birth to Mary and Joseph, the first Christmas, and singing carols around their own small Christmas tree filled with homemade ornaments and paper chains that they'd made themselves. The nostalgia of those memories had Mom beaming with love even all these years later, as if it had just happened yesterday. Dad then shared a special story that his father had told him about the night of Jesus' birth. Once upon a time in Bethlehem, it was said by many that on the night of Jesus' birth, a miracle happened. The stars aligned more beautifully than ever before and shone brighter than any other night. In the small town of Bethlehem, shepherds were tending to their flocks when they heard an angel's voice coming from heaven. The angel proclaimed that in Bethlehem, a Savior had been born to all mankind. The shepherds raced to find this new baby and followed the star to what would become known as the stable where Christ was born. As they entered, they found only hay and a manger filled with straw, not very grand for such an important event. But there too were heavenly hosts of angels singing praises and showering little newborn Jesus with love and adoration. The shepherds were awestruck by what they experienced. It was truly something special. When Dad finished sharing his story, I looked each one of them in the eyes. No more words needed to be spoken. I lifted Rachel off my lap and stood her on her feet. I rose to my feet. The rest of the family followed. I stretched out my arms to welcome and embrace. Mom and Dad hugged me as Rachel and Michael hugged them. Merry Christmas to this beautiful family, and may God bless you with health and happiness this new year, I whispered. Merry Christmas, they said back to me. I walked to the door, opened it, and stood in the doorway. I blew them all a kiss on the cheek. They blew me a kiss back. I stepped back out into the crisp night air and pulled the door closed behind me. As I walked back into the sleigh, I reflected on the tender moments I had just shared with that beautiful family. It was perfect. The neighbors had demonstrated pure elfishness through their service. Rachel had reminded all of us that He is the reason for the season, and we all shared in the magic of the song and stories. My heart was bursting with joy. I didn't want to ever lose that feeling. I lifted myself onto the sleigh and took hold of the reins. I set off into the velvety blackness of the night sky. The only sounds were the jingling bells of the reindeer and the quiet rustle of the wind rushing past me. It was my favorite part of the job, just me and my sleigh, and the endless stretch of darkness filled with sparkling stars. I looked up and spotted a shooting star. It was rare to see a shooting star during this time of the year, so I took it as a sign that there could be peace on earth if we all lived with the spirit of Christmas every day of the year. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill my lungs. As I soared through the night sky, I thought about all the people I had visited tonight and throughout the season. All their hopes and dreams, their fears and struggles laid bare before me. I wondered if they knew just how much they had touched my heart and how I was changed by them. My heart was full of gratitude for being blessed to see the world through Santa's eyes.